วัสดีครับสวัสดีท่านผู้บริหารนะครับบุคลากรของสำนักงานเศรษฐกิจการคลังนะครับรวมถึงแขกผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่านนะครับที่สนใจเข้าร่วมการรับฟังการเสวนาในรายการ Local Reach เอื้อมลึกถึงภูมิภาคนะครับผ่านระบบวิธีทัศน์ทางไกลแอปพลิเคชัน Webex ผมนายธณพวงนวมครับเศรษฐกรชำนาญการกองนโยบายเศรษฐกิจมหาภาคครับ
และดิฉันนางสาวพิชณิกาพงศ์ฤทธิกุลเศรษฐกรปฏิบัติการกองนโยบายภาษีนะคะเราทั้งสองคนรู้สึกเป็นเกียรติอย่างยิ่งที่ได้รับหน้าที่เป็นพิธีกรในวันนี้เอื้อมในรายการ Local Reach เอื้อมลึกถึงภูมิภาคประจำเดือนกุมภาพันธ์ปี 2569 ภายใต้หัวข้อ AI's Impact on Regulation หรือผลกระทบของปัญญาประดิษฐ์ต่อการกำกับดูแลของภาครัฐค่ะ
Good afternoon, Mr. Kenn Rodrigues. Distinguished guests and all participants, on behalf of Macroeconomic Policy Division, the KM team, and the Fiscal Financial Journals, we are delighted to welcome you to this month's session. Local Reach program has always been our platform for exploring critical economics challenges. Today, as a global megatrend shift rapidly, understanding how AI shapes the regulatory landscape is more essential than ever.
And as Mr. Tanat has mentioned, we're truly honored to have you here with us. And to officially commence our session, I would like to invite Mr. Mayun Bunyarat, Deputy Editor of the FEO Journal and Director of the Social Protection Strategy and Development Division, to deliver the opening remarks. Mr. Mayun, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Rodrigues. It was truly eye-opening for you. You have clearly demonstrated that we are. Okay. Good afternoon, distinguished guests and colleagues. Welcome to our February session on Local Reach. Today, we are not just discussing technology, we are discussing the future of our efficiency. The financial market are moving faster than ever as regulators' manual methods are no longer enough. We are here to explore AI impacts on regulation. Imagine reduce 10 days data analysis tasks to just 1 day, or finding critical information in 5 minutes instead of a half day. This is a kind of creative policy for modern organization we aim for. It is my great honor to introduce our speakers, Mr. Kenn Rodrigues, CEO and co-founders of DHI-AI. He brings world-class experience working with major regulators like Australian Securities and Investment Commissioner, and also Bursa Malaysia. And he also here to show us how AI can detect speculative behavior like pump and dumps, malicious activities, trading insider, that you can name it, in the real time and ensure market stabilities. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Kenn Rodrigues.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for this opportunity, Kun Mayun and Kun Tanot and Kun Peach. It's an honor to be here, and we really appreciate this opportunity, as I mentioned, to share our thoughts and share our technology with the wider group. So as the team mentioned, my name is Kenn Rodrigues, and I am the CEO and co-founder of DHI-AI. We will spend a few minutes to just give an introduction of the company. And to start with, let me just give a short introduction of my background and where I come from. So like I said, I'm Kenn Rodrigues. I'm based out of Melbourne in Australia, and my background is very much as an engineer, and I spent many years in a corporate environment, very much in analytics and technology. About 7 or 8 years ago, we came out, started to try to use technology to find pieces of information from data sets as a way to do surveillance and do monitoring. And so what happened after that, sometime 3 or 4 years ago, we started collaborating with the Australian Securities and Investment Commission, ASIC, and essentially trying to solve a problem that they had. And that problem was really, there's a lot of manual work that was involved in terms of regulation, in terms of surveillance on the market, but it's quite specific to disclosures, very specific to annual reports and news information. So there's a lot of manual work that's trying to collate all of the information And the collaboration we did was, is there a better way where we can use artificial intelligence to find that information, find those insights, and try to get the data and get the intelligence from that. So just to give you a bit of background where we came from, and I'll talk a little bit more about that afterwards. Now, DHI, as I mentioned, we're an Australian-based company. We primarily use advanced AI techniques for data extraction, for data analysis of large data sets. Now, the area of focus that we have is really on unstructured data. Now, unstructured data, for context, is information that you find in reports, information that is not structured in numbers and in a database, but it comes in free form. And the free form sometimes is very subjective, and it's very difficult to pull that information out. So that's really an area of expertise for us. We work with regulators, stock exchanges, and also the public market in the commercial market. So we have a wide breadth of experience in terms of talking to different sets of people. And then finally, like I mentioned, a lot of focus that we have is on applying AI in compliance and market oversight and for regulation. So that's just setting the scene of who DHI is. And if you allow me, I'd like to just quickly run through what the agenda is and what I'm going to talk about for the next 20 minutes. So in the next slide, you will see that I'm just going to give a really quick introduction of the emergence of AI. What's happening, what's coming up in the market, what technologies are coming in, and then we're specifically going to go to the challenges that are seen by regulators. Following that, I'm going to talk about how this AI is being applied in the regulation fields as to what we observe. Again, this is from our experience. And then before we close the session and before we go to Q&A, I'm going to be talking about a case study, some of the work that we've done for a stock exchange and a surveillance regulator within the Southeast Asian region. At any point, if there's any questions, please feel free to stop me and ask me. I'll be more than happy to address it. So to start with, we're talking about the emergence of AI, and it's no surprise to anybody that AI is the main topic and the main point that everybody talks about nowadays. When we first started our journey seven years ago, when we went in to see clients, we had to do some education. What is artificial intelligence? What does it mean? How do you do it? But over the last 2 or 3 years, it's the other way around. We go in and there's a knowledge about what AI is. However, that AI is very generic, but I'd like to introduce there are many different forms of AI that's coming into the market. And we talked about generative AI as the first thing. That's coming in really strongly in terms of large language models. How do you actually read documents, read text, and make sense of it and come up with good information? The other thing that's coming up as well is autonomous agentic systems. So this is where we have intelligent agents that does the work for humans. So agents will go and do specific tasks and do specific workflows with the intent of reducing the manual work that humans have to do for non-productive tasks. We talked about vector databases and semantic searches, and this is essentially how do you make sense or how do you actually search for information within large data sets using free-form text. So traditionally, this is essentially ChatGPT, but instead of a generic data source, we're talking about a very specific data source in your database, and that's really where a lot of AI models are coming in to do that. A couple more just to round it up, real-time anomaly detection. The traditional way of doing things, and I'll touch on that later, is using rules-based methods to find information. But the problem with rules-based is that you have a lot of false positives. And so anomaly detection is another method, an AI method where you look at the average and you find things that go out of the ordinary. And so that's coming into the AI field as well. And then finally, of course, you have the multimodal AI, and I think everybody is quite familiar with this, where you get voice, image, videos that are AI generated. And just for context, all the background images that you see on the presentation, that's all AI generated. And so you just put that as a little touch point. Now, all these tools are coming in and is being used by both good actors, like the regulators, like the exchanges, surveillance, because they're trying to get businesses to do the right things. Unfortunately, it's also being used by bad actors, and bad actors who are trying to circumvent compliance, circumvent the rules. And so it's important for regulators and surveillance to keep up, because we know that bad actors are using AI as well to gain advantages in the market. So in terms of regulators, market regulators globally, again, the experience we have is mainly with discussions that we've been having with multiple regulators around the world, and some work that we've done with ASIC and also in Malaysia. But essentially, we've had discussions with regulators in the UK, in New Zealand, Canada, Malaysia, and also in Latin America. We've done quite a bit of collaboration with them, to the extent of even having focus groups with these regulators to share information. And what we find from a lot of these discussions is that market regulators globally, they are still evaluating AI internally. There's still a sense that AI needs to be done, but there's an evaluation that needs to be done, because it's a very serious implementation that needs to happen with this. So that's one key topic, one key point. In terms of supervisory models, they are updating it as we go along, and there's a big focus in that as well, as similarly with enforcing, the rethinking of enforcement. So right now, enforcement is very much about, we see something's going wrong and then we catch it and we do something about it. Is there a way that AI can support that and accelerate that and cast the net wider so we get more efficient with it? And then finally, the other thing that global regulators that we find are thinking about and seeing is risk, the AI risk within the market. How do you know that the data is accurate? How do you know that the models can be explained and can be traced? So that's a big component of what they are looking at as well. Now, just as a side note, what we've done is we have, as I mentioned here, there's some key challenges that's being faced by the regulators and in general, the surveillance community around the world. The first one we want to mention is there are a lot of resource constraints. Resource constraints not only in terms of monetary resource, but definitely human resource as well. Do we have enough people to do the work? Do we have enough people to do the monitoring and enforcement? So that's one of the things that they're facing. Market complexity, that's also a very big challenge, because the equity markets are becoming more and more complex with different kind of equities and companies and structures. So there has to be a way to keep up with all that. The data volume explosion is a big one as well, because traditionally there has been a lot of data, but now with the amount of trade, the amount of disclosures, the amount of requirements is coming in, there's a lot of data that needs to be monitored. The other two things is the AI capability gap in the industry. But the one thing I do want to touch on a bit more is this ESG reporting and sustainability, because that is coming into the market. And I think a lot of regulators and surveillance are gearing up for that. How do we actually manage this and find that, right, are what companies saying, is that accurate? So those are some of the questions that's being asked. Can regulators partner with the industry? The answer is obviously yes, because the industry moves a lot faster. Can AI tools and intelligence be shared across different places and different domains? The answer is obviously it should be, because AI is a collective intelligence for everybody, and the more we can share in sessions like this, the better, because it's all about knowledge sharing. And then finally, can self-governance be strengthened? My personal opinion is absolutely, because businesses need to spend the time running their business. And of course, there is governance, there is compliance, but sometimes the cost of compliance gets a bit too high that it's hard to focus on the business. So a few years ago, DHI as a company, we released a few white papers. We conducted some research And we published these papers into the market. And essentially, the papers were really about how technology and AI is being adopted within market regulation. And it's not just within regulators, but also just as a more generic and wider thought process. And some of the key findings that we have in our white paper was that obviously AI adoption is accelerating, not as fast as in the commercial space, but definitely there's an increase in the usage and adoption there. There's also strong interest in false positive reduction, like I mentioned, because false positives is really prevalent. And people are still having to go through to verify that. So is there a way we can reduce that in entirety? I already mentioned ESG data being a priority. And there's also an element where there's an interest for surveillance and regulators to see whether we can get better collaboration. And so we feel very fortunate that we managed to collaborate with ASIC because that was a very positive sign within the market. So moving on, these are some things that we see in the market where AI is being applied. And if you can move to the next slide, I'll run through a few of these. And I won't go through in detail because we want to get to the case study. But from a high level, intelligent agents, AI agents, are being used to gather evidence for collection. And that's really about gathering information because agents and AI can do it faster and reach wider than humans can. Now, once you get the data, we can supplement that analysis by using things what we call retrieval augmented generation. And that's essentially finding ways to search the information to find the right information that you need at the right time. We did talk about structured data extraction is one of the expertise that we have, which is really about extracting the right information at the right time. Moving on to the next slide. So we talked about anomaly detection, and this is really using Bayesian networks as a method to find the unknown unknowns. That's really important because there's a lot of things that we don't know about. And with something like anomaly detection, it's going to push that information up to the fore. And then, of course, we want to quickly talk about voice and image AI tools. And that's really coming in, especially with fraud and deep fakes, manipulation. That's very prevalent. And so is there a way that AI can be applied to counteract that? And then finally, ESG analytics as well. AI is being applied in that space, not as prevalent yet, but definitely is going to be coming in that space. I'm just going to pause for a minute and do a quick time check. How am I doing in terms of time? Perfectly fine. Good. All right. And if there's any questions, please feel free to ask. So now we move on to the third segment. And the third segment is really, I've talked about AI coming into the market, the emergence of that. The second one I talked about is really about the challenges that regulators faced and how AI is being implemented as to our experience and what we see. AI is being implemented in that space. And I think it probably would serve it well to talk about a specific case study that where we can put this and build some color into the emergence of AI in the regulation space. And so I'm going to spend the next 5 or 10 minutes or so talking about what the work that we've done with a specific client in Asia Pac, or rather Southeast Asia. And this is really about how do we use AI to assist the surveillance team to be a bit more efficient. Now, the challenge that this client had was that there was a lot of manual work that's being done to extract data. And we're not talking about structured data because they had that covered, but we're talking about the data that's contained in annual reports. It's a 500-page document that somebody has to read through, sometimes a 1,000-page document. And there's 1,000+ change. How are they going to go through all that and review all that on a near real-time basis to actually find the right information that they need? Right now, they've got teams of people doing it, but as you can imagine, it's a very arduous task to get that done. So the other thing that the challenge was, how do you continuously monitor events that comes in? For example, like director departures, it happens very often, and how do you keep a finger on it? Company changes, company name changes, all that needs to be up to date. And then finally, all that the manual processes will impact the efficiency of surveillance and regulation. So the work that we did was to collaborate with them to try to find a way to use AI to give them a bit more efficiency. And to do that is to take away the manual processes, the manual work that the analysts had to do, the repetitive stuff, so that the analysts can focus on the things that really matter, which is how do we make a decision on a specific company? How do we find the evidence, right? And so that's really what we did. And how we did that is really using extraction of financial and non-financial information, extraction of company events from different data sources, and to put it together. So moving on to the next stage, this is the approach that we took. So first of all, what we did, we used AI to help to extract that information from PDFs, from reports, from disclosures, from financial statements. So a large, wide, varied data set. And as you can imagine, because there are so many different companies and there are so many different data formats, the challenge would be every report would be looking a bit different. And so the traditional models won't work as well because everything is different and there's a lot of variability in where certain numbers might be, tables might be different. So this is where AI was really helpful, and using large language models and prompts, we managed to find the right information, extract the right piece of data points from a large number of reports. And we could do that in bulk, and we could do that accurately. If you asked the market maybe about 3 or 5 years ago, that would be really challenging. But with the inclusion of AI and large language models, the technology is accelerating and is helping regulators get the right information. So that's the first step. We extracted information, and then we pushed it to the next stage where we start doing AI-led analytics. And in this stage, what we do is, first of all, we take the data that we've extracted and we put them into dashboards, management reporting tools, so that we can start to visualize the data. And then from there, we go to the third step where we can actually use the data to find alerts, to do investigations. And again, this is where we use agents to support that fact, to come up with explanations as to what's happening. And then finally, with the fourth step, this is where we start using AI-generated insights. We put generative AI into the picture, and where generative AI was going to help to flesh out some insights from the data that we get. And I'll talk through each of these steps in the next few slides. So moving on to the next slide, you can see that this is how we started to extract the data. And as you can appreciate, the data comes in many different formats, in many different tables. We are using large language models to find those specific pieces of information. And we're not just talking about numbers, we are also talking about concepts and different sentences. A very important point that I want to highlight here is that we are not doing this in isolation. A central premise of the way we work is we keep the human in a loop, because the human has to be involved in the workflow to validate the data, to revise the data. However, what we're encouraged by is that the AI first pass extraction is 95%. And so that greatly reduces the workflow for the human to validate the data. So they just have to validate the remaining accuracy, which cuts down a considerable amount of time. And so then we move to the next stage, which is what we call the management reporting, where we structure that data into a format that analysts will be able to visualize and find information. And so from here, once we've extracted the data, we can do additional calculations on top of that. Things like deviations, things like ratios, things like flagging documents for document summaries. That's all possible now because the right data has been extracted. We can put charts and graphs to help with executive reporting as well, because that's really important. And then finally, all of these data points can be configured. Now, once we've got that all structured, then we go to the third step. And this is where things start getting quite interesting, right? So this is where we start to prioritize things that we want to look at. Now, in terms of the traditional way surveillance is done, in fact, the traditional way a lot of things are done is to be reactive. When something happens, when you see something, then you react to it. In this case, now that we have AI coming into the picture, we can afford to be more proactive, because we're not just waiting for something to show up. AI is starting to come in and say, right, I think you need to look at this case because we are seeing something unusual here. And so that's what alerts and investigations is. And that's where we use the data, we use AI and agents to prioritize things that need to be looked at first. And so they can be more proactive. And not only that, if you see the image on the right, under the remarks, for each alert, the agents are going out, the intelligent agents are going out and finding explanations as to why this is an alert, so that the analyst comes in and they will just look at the alert and they already have a reason behind why this is a problem. And then finally, like I mentioned, we're using AI-generated insights to find more information within the data sets, whether it's putting a query-based analysis on top of the knowledge base so that they can do something like a ChatGPT query onto the data sets. So that becomes really powerful. So they can ask questions like, tell me the trends of this company in March of 2025, and they can find the answer in text form. Tell me if this company has any alerts today, and then you can get the answers very quickly. So very useful for quick and rapid analysis. On top of that, agents and AI-generated insights also helps us to start looking into AI-generated reports, or I should say auto-generated report, because what we're finding traditionally is that it takes analysts a long time to pull reports together, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And sometimes when you do that, you do have that long time frame, the data is already old. And so you're potentially missing some steps. So when you start using AI agents, you can get to auto-generate reports, you get real-time data, you get real-time reports, and it cuts the time for the analyst to actually do the work. So as a summary to that case study, some of the results and benefits we are seeing is that in terms of data processing and analysis, we are seeing a huge increase in efficiency, because it takes away a lot of that manual reading of information and just picking out the important points that you want. We do know that the data analysis and report generation has gone down from a number of days to just 1 day. And like I mentioned, there was a 95% accuracy on the first pass for the data. And why that's important is just the first time we run the model across the data sets, we're really getting 95% accuracy before we do any improvements and validation of the data. And that, of course, it'll continue to increase and get higher and higher. And then the final one I just do want to mention is the increase in efficiency in finding information. Traditionally, if they wanted to find something as simple as how many female directors are left in the company, they will have to go through and look at multiple different sources of data. And it might take them half a day to get the answer. And this has come down to 5 minutes, because they just have to query and say, tell me how many female directors are left. And you get the answer right away. So to summarize and to conclude the discussion, what's next? What can we see in the future when it comes to AI? And I wish I had a crystal ball, but I don't, unfortunately. But one of the things we do predict and we do see is that AI will become more autonomous. So the question becomes, how much is the human going to remain in the loop? my personal view is that the human needs to be in the loop to validate and to be there as part of the process. AI is going to be more embedded in everything we do, of course, whether it's regulation, supervision, enforcement, but it's definitely going to be embedded. We are seeing a bit more, and we are going to see a lot more multimodal AI uses. And when we say multimodal, we mean a combination of different AI models coming in to tackle a specific challenge and a specific problem. And then finally, we will see definitely faster regulatory cycles, we hope, because that's essentially the goal. Whoops. So the question then becomes for regulators, there is going to be an impact. That's definitely, and are we ready for that? The answer is absolutely. It needs to come with continuous adaptation, industry collaboration, real-time oversight capability, and governance.
Thank you, Mr. Ken, for a valuable presentation. We have a question from our audience online, and I already read from them. The first question is, why do you think why AI has become more important for government agency as we are a regulator? Why do you think it's important for us?
Sure. There are many different reasons, in my opinion. One of it, of course, is speed. Speed to review things, speed to look at what's going on and to keep up to date. Because in the current market, in the current equity market, things move very quickly. And so regulators need to keep up with the pace of that. They are doing that to a certain extent, but sometimes, having the right tools in place to go faster, that's a very important point. The second point I'll say is that we know if the regulators are not using AI, we know some bad actors are. So in order to keep up with the bad actors who are using AI, the regulators need to keep up the pace as well. So I think it's very important. Regulators and governments need to embrace it and to come to terms with it, because we know that AI is not going to go away. It is going to expand and it's going to be used by everybody. So it's just a matter of keeping up and getting up to speed.
And the second question is, as you mentioned that DHI has engaged regulatory across UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and also in Asian country. Do you think are there any different to implement in each country and have any challenges? Yeah.
Just to clarify, if the question is to implement the technology, absolutely. So there are many different ways to do that and ways to change. Sorry. Right, this is better. All right, so if the question is on implementation of technology within different countries and geographical locations, yeah, definitely many differences and many challenges as well that's faced. One of it, of course, is language. But when you cross UK, when you cross Canada, Australia, that goes away because everybody uses English. However, when you talk about Asian countries like Thailand, like Malaysia, like Indonesia, it becomes a bit more complex because you're going to need to read in that language and interpret. So that's one of the challenges. The other one is data sovereignty, because the location of the data is important. The security of the data is very important as well. So there's a lot of thoughts and things that we have to do to make sure that the data remains within the country and within the right environment so that it doesn't go out and security is maintained.
We have one question from the audience and she would like to speak up. So she has the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kenn, for sharing the excellent presentation about your AI analytics approach. I have two main questions. First of all, from your perspective in the industry, what is the realistic capacity for Thailand to develop a similar platform locally? And another question is, what are the primary factors that, as you know, we are the Ministry of Finance, we need to know what the private sector needs. So in term, from your experience, what is the main critical factors that you need to support from the government? Thank you.
So I'll address the first question. And I'm just going to talk about that question again. And if I heard it correctly, you said, what does the government, what does Thailand need in terms of developing AI within the country? Did I get the answer? Okay. So in terms of that, definitely talent, local talent is important. And there is a lot of local talent here. And you can probably talk a bit more about that as well, but definitely talent to interpret, to analyze, that's really to program, that's all quite important as well. So having that in place is very important. The one thing that, again, in my view, that is really important when you go across different geographical areas is domain expertise. And having that domain knowledge within the country, within the environment, that's probably a value that the country provides. And the more that can be developed and everything, the better. So again, just to answer the question, what's needed? The talent is really important. Maintaining that domain expertise is important. And of course, the third one, what is needed, I'll keep going back to data. The data is whether or not it's having that access to data and also the readiness of the data. That is really important as well. So, there's a lot of work sometimes that needs to be done to clean the data, to wrangle the data. And the more that the data is ready, the quicker you can go. The second question that you had, and I'm going to have to apologize because I couldn't quite hear the question, but would you mind repeating that second part, the second question again?
Sure. The second question is about the role of the government that the private sector need for developing that kind of AI platform in Thailand right now.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So it's essentially the role that the government could play to help develop AI. And again, I'll talk from my experience, right? Because there's a wider area which I don't have the expertise on. But just from my experience over the last few years of what I've experienced within, and I'm going to choose Australia because that's where we live. What they are doing is there's a strong link to support industry to co-develop solutions. And whether or not that's through collaboration, whether or not that's through grants, there's a lot of effort that's being done within the government sector, within the public sector in Australia to encourage a lot of this innovation. We were fortunate to be one of those companies that has benefited from this collaboration with the government. And that's allowed us to work with ASIC, work with different, open some doors with other government departments. And that's really, really helpful because that has helped innovation. And that has encouraged innovation to where we are today. So to answer your question, I think my thoughts here is that government can do quite a bit to encourage industry to come up with innovative ideas. And that's really in collaboration with government departments like the Securities Exchange Commission, with the MOF. Having more industry collaboration will definitely accelerate the pace of innovation and the pace of AI. I hope that answered the question.
Oh, thank you so much. We will note that for our policy making in the future. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If no more questions online, I would like to ask a question for myself. So you said one of the emerging trends is to look at anomalies from the ESG reports. So I was wondering, what exactly are you detecting from the ESG reports? What anomalies are you looking for?
Yeah. So in terms of ESG reports, there's a concept of greenwashing, right? So companies potentially will claim things that are not entirely accurate. They will say certain things that to expand and say that they are sustainable, but when you actually look at the facts, that they're not. And so that's the kind of anomalies that would be really valuable. So the assurance of the data. So when the data comes in and in their reports, being able to validate to say that, right, is that really accurate what they're claiming? And the way to do that, one way to do that is to validate that against external data sources. What's out in the news? What's out? What are people saying about it? Because ESG reports and sustainability reports comes in from the company's voice. And so we need to validate that with what's out there in the industry, what's out there in the commercial space, right? And so one of the methods to do that is to validate the data against external sources.
So on behalf of the macroeconomic policy team, the KM team, and the FPO journal, I extend my deepest gratitude to Mr. Rodrigues for his time and for sharing experience with us. Your contribution has greatly enriched our understanding and inspired us to consider how these innovations can be applied in our ministry and also the Thai government. Thank you.
Thank you to you all of support from Deposit Protection Agency, Export-Import Bank of Thailand, Krung Thai Bank, Government Pension Fund, Thai Credit Guarantee Corporation, and National Credit Bureau. Thank you all for your active participation and engagement. I am confident that the ideas shared today will help us generate our appropriate economic policy under our vision creative policy for modern organization towards a sustainable economy. Thank you, and I wish you all the best in your work ahead. Thank you. ขอบคุณครับ
Did that answer your question? Thanks.
Any more questions? Last questions? Okay, if no more, I would like to, sorry. So if no more questions, we would like to conclude the session on AI's impacts on regulation. I would like to take a moment to reflect on the insights that we have gained today. Mr. Kenn Rodrigues, he has generously shared his extensive expertise in delivering AI solutions to global regulatory bodies and stock exchanges in the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and Malaysia. And his perspectives have provided us with a clearer understanding of how AI can be leveraged to enhance public sector oversight and ensure market stability. And today we have also explored why AI has become a tool, moving beyond traditional manual methods to efficiently extract unstructured insights, structuring, management reporting, alerts, investigations, and also generating insights from those data. And we have also seen how AI is specifically utilized to detect and track speculative market behaviors with greater precision and speed. Is that all right? Okay, and any more questions online? Okay, Mr. Mayun.
I have a following question from Ms. Pinyapasorn. One thing that I just noticed, you are from Melbourne, and I just Google it. It's 14 globally top tech city. It's been half of Australian tech city. What is the government support that a startup into Melbourne? Because I have been there. It seems like a tourism city, but it's changed to tech.
Actually, you're right. It is. Melbourne has traditionally been known for its food scene, so very diverse in terms of food. One of the best places to live. Traditionally, second or third in the world constantly, and a very pleasant city. But over the last 5 to 10 years, there's been a big push to make Melbourne the innovation city, to have a lot of tech companies coming out from Melbourne. And so there are many things, many initiatives that happens. For example, there's an organization called LaunchVic, and LaunchVic is by the Victorian government, and their role is to help startups build the startup ecosystem. And they do that by bringing accelerator groups together, bringing startups together and help to flesh out ideas and flesh out innovations. They will also help to push companies and to support companies in getting funding, VC funding, because they have a wide network of VC venture capitalist companies within Australia, and they will help to bridge that gap between startups and VCs. They also have a lot of good programs, like the 30 by 30, where they get companies, the top 30 companies that could potentially be unicorns, and they will bring them in and help support them and go out. Right? So this is a plug for LaunchVic. So I hope that they recognize that. But this is just one of the examples that's been happening within the space. There's a lot of other areas that's happened, like Breakthrough Victoria as well. That's also another initiative that the Victorian government has initiated. But there's been quite a bit of that going on. And finally, the last thing I want to mention is that within the Australian or the Victorian government, there's Global Vic, and Global Vic is they've been very supportive, as Austrade has as well, with a lot of companies from Australia. And what they do is they encourage Australian companies to go out and export the technology and the innovation, because through that exportation, not only do we get to see whether the technology goes out, but we learn a lot as well. As a company, we learn about how things are done in Asia, and how things are done in the UK. And then from there, we can start to innovate faster and quicker. We can build partnerships, we build bigger networks. And so to answer your question, with a few of these initiatives like LaunchVic, Breakthrough Victoria, Global Vic, there's a lot of encouragement that they have for innovation and companies.